Will you hit got it right there on that?
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll call the meeting to order. And would everyone please stand for the flag salute and carry.
Please follow me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
A roll call.
O'Gorman,
Here.
Laughlin. Here. Colgrove. Absent. Waddy.
Here.
George.
Here.
Wells. Absent. Myers. Absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. The only item on our agenda tonight is discussion item, study session, introduction, overview, and implementation of the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS. So,
I'll go ahead to make the adopt the agenda. Even though it's the second.
oh, not the agenda. Yikes. Okay. Where's that? Oh, there it is. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I move we adopt the agenda.
Moves, is there a second?
One second.
Carrie seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Okay, now, discussion item, the study session, introduction, overview and implementation of the multi-tiered system of support, MTSS.
Well, thank you. I want to thank Melanie Susavilla for driving up over from Gardner Humboldt with her driver, Jack Morales. This is simply for us to have some discussion, get an orientation to the multi-tier system of supports that you'll hear referenced a lot in our LCAP and general discussions about educational services, in discussions about special education. And we're asking you to make decisions that will impact students, and we're trying to frame our student services in an MTSS in that structure of support. And we thought, well, you better know what the framework means and how the decision we're making will impact that. So it's part of California's mandate and vision for serving students. Our goals are for just to do a brief orientation and overview. And then as part of the study session, I'm going to lead an activity just where we do some self-assessment, because one of the things that happens when we're talking about tiered levels of support is you always start with, where are we at? So Carrie, who is an expert reading teacher, knows before you teach reading, you do an assessment to see where the students are at. So before we start building a structure, there's a really important piece of this that has to do with governance. And so we get to go, where are we at as a governing, or you are as a governing board, and myself as the lead with the administrative team. Melanie and Craig and myself are the steering committee for the district MTSS team. The team is comprised of the steering committee plus Carmi Hostler. So we have business and student services connecting and talking to each other. David Ellie, because that way we have communication and information talking to the system. And we've invited Virgil Moorhead from Two Feathers to be part of that, because in addition to being an expert clinician, he thinks about big picture changes, systems changes, coordination.
And Marco.
And thank you. And Margot is on. She's really, in addition to being the director of Indian education, she is really into data. She's really into where are we at, where did we come from, how do we set our sights on where we're heading for our students' achievement. I'm going to just read what's on the board packet agenda, just as an overview of information, so that folks who are not here can hear this, and then I'll turn it over to them. Plymouth Trinity Joint Unified School District is laying the foundation for building a multi-tiered system of support in the local control accountability plan. So this is a little bit, sorry. The study session is intended to provide an orientation to MTSS, Now, I'm gonna have to say what printed versus what I actually wrote in that, because some of it is cut off. So we're also going to participate in an assessment of the progress of the district in the implementation of an MTSS. Facilitators, Melanie Sisavilla, Jennifer Blake, Craig Kimball. And I wanted to read to you this piece from the California Department of Education website. This is something that's widespread in California. Districts are at different levels of progress towards building their systems. A multi-tiered system of support is a framework that aligns response to intervention with the California state standards. What is an MTSS? California's MTSS focuses on aligning initiatives and resources within an educational organization to address the needs of students. It's a framework for LEAs. It's another word we will say, the local educational agency, basically the district, to align academic, behavioral, and social learning. MTSS offers the potential to create systematic change through the intentional integration of services and supports for students. California's vast and complex pre-kindergarten through grade 12 educational system requires a multi-leveled vision of one coherent system of education. I'm gonna have to, there's something about this that's cut off. Yeah, I can't, I'm trying to, I'm not, it looks like it's more than one word. So I'm gonna stop there because I put the link in the agenda. So I feel like I'm trying to make up words because I thought, oh, it's just cut off the word. It's cut off actually multiple words. So California Department of Education's website, you can even just Google CDE MTSS, and there are multiple resources, but starting with an overview. So here we're going to have Melanie provide an overview. The attachments were for you to look at ahead of time, just to get an idea of what we're talking about with continuum of support. It's supporting all students, additional supports for some students, and intensive supports for few students. The triangle. Those of you who are familiar with RTI, response to intervention, this will be not very different, because that's just the academic part. So, Melanie, you ready to start us off?
I am. First off, I'd like to say thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate being able to come and talk to you all. If at some point you cannot hear me, just tell me. I used to be a teacher, so I'll talk in my teacher voice. I also do want to point out, if you're looking at the slides, the very first one that we have up here says that we are citing OCDE. That's the Orange County Department of Education. As Jennifer indicated, California does have some pretty extensive information on the implementation of multi-tiered systems of support in the schools, but the Orange County Department of Education is the vehicle for delivering and overseeing the initiative in the state of California.
The state funds it, the state
does fund it. It's called the SUMS initiative. SUMS means scaling up to MTSS. And if you see their logo is a little umbrella. You've probably seen it where, the umbrella is over the schools and the kids. And because it's supposed to be the umbrella policy, Jen's showing it right now, it's supposed to be the umbrella policy for the state of California. The materials that you'll see in here are not necessarily developed by the Orange County Department of Education. Most of them are developed by the Swift Schools organization. But the way that OCDE presents their information, it's much more user friendly. And so what I've done is taken a lot of the materials that we're going to see tonight from a training module that OCDE has on their website that's for LEA teams to learn about MTSS. So this will be a really broad overview. We're not going to go in the weeds. We're not going to drill down tonight. It is really just meant to give you a broad idea of what an MTSS framework looks like. And then Jen's going to take you through a part of MTSS that is very specific to boards. Okay, so we'll get started by looking at the California MTSS framework. Just so that you know, I'm probably going to have to fidget with the font in these links throughout the night. But this one looks okay to start with. There's no way to make, you know what, I'm going to
Yes.
lift that thing up as high as it'll go. And I actually think we'll be okay with it up there, Jen.
You go to where the little flat, when you're hovering over it, the little flat part to your left, all the way on the left, it'll shrink it down.
Oh, that will make me happy. Okay. All right. So, so first off, I feel like you've probably all heard of MTSS, and you've seen the big triangle, the big MTSS triangle. And when you see that, you see that it has 3 tiers, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes. And at the bottom of that triangle is tier 1. And then as you're moving up, it's tier 2 and tier 3. And I'll explain those in a couple of minutes. But what you also see is that triangle is split up into 3 strands: an academic strand, a behavior strand, and a social emotional strand. That is a little bit misleading because that is not the MTSS framework. What that is the first domain. So the MTSS framework is made up of 5 domains, and any LEA that is trying to implement an MTSS must address all of those 5 domains. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can actually see it. Okay, my eyes are older than they used to be. So, so the first domain is the whole child domain. And if you can see that, you notice that that first gold box says academic, the second one says behavior, and the third one says social emotional. So when you see that MTSS triangle, that is representing only one domain of an MTSS framework. We are also responsible for, see if this will not get blurry if I bump it up one more. We're also responsible for 4 other domains, and there they are. And so, so all of this, and by the way, I can give you the source for all of this information later. So if you don't want to take notes or whatever, or you want to do more, a little bit more research on it, I can give that to you. So we also have the domains of administrative leadership. And you can see there's a lot that goes into that, but you can see, which we'll take a tiny look at in a moment. You can see that what that's looking at is strong and engaged site leadership features and strong educator support system features. The integrated supports domain, which talks about your organizational structure and your school culture. Your family and community engagement domain, which is self-explanatory, and your inclusive policy structure, which means that the district has a strong relationship with the schools that are within the district, and that we are always looking at our policy, updating our policy and our systems so that we are addressing the whole child domain. And so if we go down here, I just want you to see, actually, I think you, Jen, did you give them the MTSS framework? You did. So Jen gave you this in your handout, and you might want to keep this out while I go through the rest of this part. Because we're going to be referring to the MTSS framework for the next few minutes. Okay, and so just very briefly, we're gonna look at some of the things that are contained in
all of these. Number one, I'm not going to go into any of these links because these are not live links. They are links that are embedded until they don't work anymore. And but number two, remember that this is a broad overview. So the whole child domain, again, when we're looking at that inclusive academic instruction, we are really looking at a way to address the academic needs of every child in every school in an inclusive environment. And so the things that you see there are means to an end, I guess is a way to say it. They are ways that we might be able to do that. They are California's way of helping to meet our goal of addressing those academic needs. Couple things on here, the P21 framework, that's the CTE Century 21 framework. And notice that this is interesting because this is the academic strand, but notice that it says we must integrate culturally relevant and responsive teaching practices. So when we talk about academics, we're not talking about academics maybe in the old school sense where it was just 3 R's. We're talking about how to address the needs of the whole child. And obviously that's the name of this domain. And so the second part of this, by the way, if I go too fast or if I'm not making any sense, just shout out and say, what do you mean by that? Okay, and I don't have a problem with that at all. The second part of this is the behavior part of it. Your district engaged heavily in starting to develop this strand last year. Maggie was working within the district on PBIS last year. She did a fantastic job with that. And you'll notice some of the things that it says, create and utilize teams, including specialized service providers, provide a continuum of support that includes evidence-based practices. Your district chose PBIS last year, which is an evidence-based practice. And then moving over to the social emotional instruction and mental health support, same thing. We can see here a list of items to help us meet our goal. Moving down to here where it says integrate SEL, that's social emotional learning, competencies aligned. So there are actually a list of social emotional learning competencies to help instructors integrate SEL into their curricula. And so that all is in domain 1. Again, remember when you see that triangle, it doesn't say all of this, but this is what it means. Okay, moving down, we're going to take a look at the continuum of support. And I see that Jen gave that to you too. In a way, this visual bugs me. And the reason it bugs me is because it's upside down. And what I mean by that is when you see the triangle, remember I said you see the triangle, here it is, and that first layer is tier 1, okay, at the bottom of the triangle. And the second layer in the middle, that's tier 2, and the top is tier 3. Well, they've got it reversed here, and they always show it this way. So we'll just have to understand that this part where I have the cursor right now, the universal support, that's usually on the bottom of the triangle. The continuum of support means that we're going to teach to all first. All means all, every single student. We're going to utilize whatever tactics we can. We're going to bring in universal design for learning. We're going to try to meet the needs of every single student in an inclusive manner. That's the universal support tier. We all know that we're not going to meet the needs of every single student, no matter how hard we try, when we are teaching to all. And some students are going to need more support. And that's what this supplemental support means. So imagine that you were a teacher and you were teaching math. I used to be a math teacher. So you're teaching math in your classroom and you notice that there's this group of however many students who can't seem to figure out how to add fractions. Okay. Now you need to put in a tier 2 support because you can't just leave those kids behind. That's what we used to do old school. We would just leave those kids behind. We taught it to them, their fault, they didn't learn it. So we don't do that anymore. We don't do that in MTSS. We have to find a way to reach those 2 kids, to give them additional support. And so that's your tier 2. That is supposed to be less than 15% of your population. The smaller the number there, the better your MTSS is working, okay? And then we all know that there are some kids who need even more support, maybe even individualized support. You all know that you have instructional aides assigned to students in your schools. That would be an intensified, a tier 3 support. A tier 3 support might be maybe not even individualized, but maybe a pair of students or 3 students who all need the same support. And so when we get up into this realm, we're looking at trying to get our MTSS working so well that we're looking at fewer than 5% of our students that need this intensified support. So the majority of our students are finding success here, 85% even more success in this level, okay? But then those that don't are getting a little more support and hopefully finding success here. And the number of students who find success here, we hope is a very small number, because if we're doing our jobs, we are helping students find success in the lower levels. Okay, and then moving on down, we've got, and we're not going to watch any of these videos, but I will give you the source and you might want to take a look later because it's good stuff. I just want to take a quick look at these remaining domains. So far, we were looking at the whole child domain and the continuum of supports. This is just a little bit more about that administrative leadership domain. And so I read this to you before. I said the administrative leadership domain meant that we have a strong and engaged site leadership. Just wanted you to be able to glance through the bullet points here under that to see what kinds of things might fall under that category. And same thing over here, the strong educator support system features. And I know I'm not giving you enough time to read through all of this, but if I did that, we would be here for a very long time tonight. So, slow me down if you want to, but I'm just going to kind of keep us moving forward. You'll notice that when we're going through these other domains, you're going to see use data, database decision making. So one of our goals is really to flesh out, pump up our data systems so that data is useful to our teachers, to our administrators, to our staff as a whole, and doesn't have to be, I'm going to use Northern Humboldt for an example. It used to be that if I wanted data, I would have to go to the data coordinator and say, can you get me some data on X out of the student information system? Because it was so difficult. But we're trying to simplify our data systems and make them more user-friendly so that we can make them more useful to our staff. Here's our integrated supports domain. Again, I read this part to you, organizational structure and positive school culture, but just to give you an idea of what falls underneath those items. notice that we're looking at integration of trauma-informed practices, restorative practices, transformative social emotional learning. So all of this in an effort to develop academically successful students. And then, of course, we have our family and community engagement. The number one item here being trust between the district, sites, the community, parents. And so we can just take a glance there. And then I think we're on the last domain, the policy, structure, and practice. So here's again where we see this the strong school relationship with the district, and a lot of work on policies, systems. Again, you're seeing data. We're looking at data to improve. All right, so I'm just gonna show you this one more time. So all of that, you have this before you, major 5 domains, okay? Here is domain number 1, domain number 2, 3, 4, 5. All of those 5 domains together make an MTSS framework. Okay, so going back to our PowerPoint, the next thing that we're gonna look at is whole system engagement. And when I get done talking about this one, which is going to be super duper short, then I have an opportunity for you to talk here. So the whole system engagement piece, that's big, almost fits on there. Hang on a second.
Control management.
I want it to be big enough where people can see it, but okay, we're going to leave it right there. Okay, so student engagement piece, the purpose of our work is all about the students and the families. The place where transformation takes place is in the school, but the point of intervention is in the district. What that means is that the schools have a degree of autonomy in how they implement their MTSS, but the district has the responsibility for oversight. It is the district's responsibility to define the systems, to define the policies, so that the schools can be the points of transformation and that the students can be successful. And then right here, according to this website, the main source of technical support is county, the region, the state. You all have me. You all have the grant, and you have these resources. So you have, because you're involved with the grant, you have an extra layer of support here. Okay, so I'm wondering at this point, as a whole group, I just wanted us to, thinking about what's been said so far, are we able to name, I said 3 things, it doesn't matter. Are we able to name 1 or 2 or 3 things that will need to take place in this district, in our district, in order that we'll be able to develop whole system engagement? Okay. What do we think at this point? And if we're not ready to shout anything out, that's okay too. I just wanted to give folks an opportunity. Any questions so far or comments?
Can you ask that question again? Because I have to absorb it somewhat.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go backwards because I should have told you what I was going to ask you first. I wondered if we could name some things that might take place in our district in order for this to happen. And let me, That's not what I wanted. Let me zoom this out.
I could name something that might happen.
Let me zoom this out for just a second so that you can, I want you to look at the bottom of this slide here. Okay, so here's our visual, and here's our definition. The students and the family are the purpose of the work. The schools have the most direct influence. They are the place of transformation. The district is the point of intervention with the responsibility to define the systems. And then we've got our support. So you all know your district. What are some things that might need to take place in our district in order for us to venture down this path to where we have a cohesive system? Carrie.
Assessment. And I don't mean assessment that's the state assessment. I mean, each classroom has assessments that are appropriate for their kids, that are easily accessible for the teacher to use for information going forward. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's one I could go on, but maybe some other people.
That's a very good one. Yes. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not really sure if this is before, but I feel like we need to build more trusting relationships
Yes.
between each of those.
Yes, you are both hitting the nail right on the head. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was thinking in our community, communication is difficult. Our internet is sporadic at best. Not everyone has it. Not everyone has phones. So communication from the school to our community is a very difficult one with the fragmented systems in place.
I would agree with you, and I would go even further than that. I'm working with several districts, and what I see is a lot of districts doing a lot of good work that's not filtering down into the classroom because of communication barriers. And so, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've been working with DHHS, for example, for years, and I see the same thing. Large organization, very well intentioned, doing wonderful work at a certain level, just not filtering down to where it needs to go. So yeah, communications is a big one. Yes, ma'am.
So on that note, do you have, or could you get for us connections that we could make through the state? I mean, Mike McGuire is probably one of them, but we need to make connections to get funding, to get more connectivity with our phones and our internet. Our phones right now are down from Friday Ridge Road all the way to Del Loma, because Frontier is now going to lay the cable from Junction City on towards Friday Ridge. That's fiber cable, and it's going to take 2 months. And we've already been without phones for 1 month. And Del Loma's in Junction City, some of them have been out for 2 months. And how are you supposed to teach if you have to teach distance learning without that connection?
That is a great point.
And I really think that our state senators and whoever else is in government need to know that, because there is federal funding out there for communication. There's like $6 billion sitting in the coffers for rural education and, for rural connection. So we need to get the ball rolling on
That's
it.
a great point that you bring up. And I'm going to delay the answer to that. And actually, maybe Jack, have you think about that until we get to the end of this and come back around to that question. If you don't have access to your kids, what are you supposed to do, right? Jen?
So, and another aspect of, engaging the whole system. Oh, I left your graphic.
Oh, sorry.
I have that back.
Sorry.
So I think that we talk about data and how there are not always consistent interpretations of what something means.
Mhm.
So we have identified that having operational definitions is really important. What does a suspension mean? What does a chronic absence or a student is identified? So really getting those, that's part of the communication, and getting those definitions aligned. And then I think that when we have tools that come in at the district level, for example, our student information system, then looking at the school site where, as you were saying, it's the closest to the students and the families, having training, because there's a lot of technical gaps,
Absolutely.
because our current SIS system isn't that old. It hasn't, I mean, there's so many tools that people could access, but it's almost like you just need to focus on
Yes,
some basics and then build up to really use the data.
I agree with that. And, you know, another thing is, we have someone in NOHUM who's working really hard on bringing in the Swiss data system. We think we're about a month out. And as soon as we get this all figured out, how to jive with our student information system, we're going to share it with you. So yes, so fingers crossed. I think we've gone over the hump, and as soon as we find the secret, we will share it with you. Also, I'm having 2 additional facilitators trained so that we'll have some folks who can really give some good help to your district. So I'm going to move us along. Jack's not going to forget that we need to address that question. But we do need to move forward for now, because we do want to talk a little bit about connecting the MTSS to the LCAP. What we do not want to have is an MTSS over here and an LCAP over here that are different from each other. That would not be a good thing. So we're going to take a look at another visual, which I'm also not going to read to you, just going to let you take a look at. And I want for us to make 2 observations about each category in the visual that I show you. So maybe noting similarities or noting differences. Okay. And Jen, if I'm overly long-winded, let me know that I need to cut it off at some point, because I'm looking at the clock. It's right beside the screen. And so you just let me know. All right, so I'm going to blow this up. You're not going to be able to see the whole thing all at one time. That's okay, because I'm going to move it around to help you. Okay, so this is called the LCAP and MTSS alignment document, also known as the MTSS crosswalk. And I believe that your district, Jen's going to talk about this more in a second, but your district began the path of LCAP alignment to an MTSS with this last year, the last LCAP that you approved. And so if you take a look at this, the first category is conditions of learning. This over here, this is just the definition of the LCAP. This is the definition of the MTSS. And if you're like me, you probably can't see a word of any of that. So now I can see it, and I hope that you can too. So if we look at the conditions of learning, just take a look at what it says for LCAP, conditions of learning, and what it says for MTSS, conditions of learning. And let's just make 2 observations. How are they the same? How are they different? I'm going to try it. Oh, see, it's not, see, it's better.
You can move the little green up to it.
Yeah, there we go. So what do we see? How are they the same? I'll give you a prompt. Do they both say that we better be addressing the needs of all students?
Yes.
They do, don't they? That's how they are the same here. And then let me revise my question. Instead of saying, how are they different? Let me say, are they different? Okay, how are they different?
They get more specific. One of them gets more specific in a certain area, and the other gets more specific. They have different areas that they get more specific.
They do. So there are some differences. So in your LCAP, when you write goals that conform to MTSS, you also need to include LCAP metrics and that sort of thing. Okay, but the first category really says we will address the needs of all students in this district. And then moving over, and
Melanie, I hadn't looked at it this big ever, but the other thing I'm seeing is that the MTSS kind of talks about what we are providing. And because the LCAP is tied to the state's priorities, this is how we're going to get this done. This is
yes,
how we can provide
yes,
the best education is to have fully credentialed teachers. So I never actually looked at it that way before.
yes. Thank you, Jen. Okay, I'm gonna try and figure out how to move this. Yeah,
You highlight some.
I don't think I can. I think I'm gonna have to take it back down. It won't slide. Yeah, it's not gonna slide. I think I'm gonna have to make it smaller.
Yeah.
All right, let me try doing this. Let me try. It won't because it's part of a website. Okay, I think I can take it up one more time though. I really just can't. So, maybe move closer. Maybe get out of your seats and move closer if you have to. I think that that's an okay thing to do.
Yeah.
So again, what we're after here, we're in this second category here, this one right here, and we're trying to see how are these things the same and how are they different? Because if they're telling us, the state of California is telling us that we should be aligning our MTSS and our LCAP, what is it that they're wanting us to do here?
So
It's
one of
this
them
other
talks
one
about
that's
the students'
right in the
engagement,
middle.
and the other one talks about the family and community.
Okay, so did everyone hear what Carrie said? She said one of them talks about student engagement and the other one talks about family and community engagement. So, oh, that's so much better. And so basically we know now that we're talking about student, family, and community engagement. And I think that when we looked at our domains at the beginning, that's what we were getting as well. Is there any other takeaways from this second category right here, which is engagement? Look at the top here, it's just engagement. One of the things that I'm going to bring up that a couple of, I think 2 of you brought up previously, was trust was going to be extremely important when going down this path and engaging our families and our communities. Okay, let's move over to pupil outcomes. Boy, these ones are both short. So we've got the LCAP talking about student achievement, and just giving a short blurb saying that that means improving outcomes for all students to ensure student success. And MTSS starts with the word all students again. So really, pupil outcomes, I'm just going to go ahead and go down the path here. Pupil outcomes as defined by the LCAP and the MTSS mean that we are finding a way to engage and develop successful students, every single student in our district. And I'm going to go ahead and move us forward here because Jen is going to talk a little bit more about that in just a few minutes. And so strength-based approach, let's read this. Stop. Take the opportunity to analyze data to identify what is working well in your LEA and schools and leverage those strengths to improve areas of opportunity. So the visual here is really this. What does strengths look like? The wisdom, knowledge, successful strategies, positive attitudes, no finger pointing. Best practices. As educators, one of the finest things we have access to is best practices. We have so many wonderful people doing so many wonderful things, and we don't always take notice of that, and we don't always try to replicate that. We don't always showcase those people. So if I go back here, again, actually, I'm not going to go back, I'm going to go down. Nope, I'm going to go up. Something I wanted you to take a look at. Too often, as educators, we focus on what isn't working. So we try to fix it. We introduce new programs. We try to do whatever we can to fix it. But sometimes what we really should be doing is taking a step back, analyzing what we have, looking at our data, and making sound decisions based on that. And so I'm going to stop with that. And moving on to the next slide, we have an activity at this point. So now I'm going to leave the lights on. Okay. Remember that this is your MTSS framework. Okay, this document right here. So take this out. You could probably guess that I was like a bossy teacher, right? So what we're going to do is we want to identify right now some bright spots of practice, and we want to identify what existing assets and resources we can build on. Okay, just given the information that we've presented so far today. So what I have over here is a little chart that I made. Okay, this is my MTSS framework. Okay, it matches this. Okay, here is my academic component in domain number 1, behavior in domain number 1, and social emotional. Okay, and then here is my administrative leadership domain. Here it is with the 2 categories. My integrated educational framework with the 2 categories, family and community engagement, 2 categories, and inclusive policy, structure, and practice, 2 categories. I would like for all of you to try and choose just write on 2 Post-it notes, 1 idea on each Post-it note. And I want those Post-its, that your idea to address 1 or both of those questions that are up on the chart, on the slide. What are our bright spots of practice? What existing assets and resources can we build on? So I'm going to take low-hanging fruit, okay? I'm going to give you an example. I know that your district has an excellent start on PBIS. Okay, I know that for sure. So I might write, taking this away from all of you, I might write PBIS on my note, because that's a bright spot of practice and it's an existing asset that we can build on. Okay, so my sticky note might say PBIS, and I come over here and I say, where does PBIS go on here? Well, there are a couple of places I could put it, but I'll tell you where I would put it would probably be right here. Because PBIS addresses the whole child. This is the whole child domain, and it very much addresses behavior and social emotional. Okay, to take the pressure off, there are no wrong answers. Okay, there are no wrong answers. Really, what I'm really trying to have us take a look. It's called asset framing. Okay, we want to think positive. What have we got going on already that we can build on? Okay, and it gives you an opportunity to get up out of your seat. So if you could write 1 idea on at least 2 notes, 2 sticky notes, and then put them over there, I would love to see what we've got to start with.
Do you need more?
I don't.
No, oh, yeah,
I've got some.
we have to go on.
Okay, so when you have your notes, just go on over and put them on the chart. Talk to your neighbor about where you think it might go. You decide yourself, however you want to do it.
Let's do this.
I'm good. How are you? That's good. You got a bunch on your plate right now.
Keeps me out of trouble.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Hopscotch.
So everyone knows what to tell the trained runner, right?
Feel free to talk to your neighbor about where your sticky note might belong.
Concerned about. I should send you the link. It's not like the last one. What are you thinking about?
How far did it go? Was it all?
I have to put PBIS.
I can't commit to any, I guess.
I'm not committing, I'm putting mine away.
Put everything together and they don't have that much. That they felt like. I said, oh, who does this?
Yeah.
Young and fresh study out.
That's what we have that.
Okay, some of the things that we have up here, under academic, we have, the Success for All, the reading program, the literacy program. Teachers are leaders in early literacy training. Classrooms that include all students. Services are delivered in other settings, but students have a place in general education. That is a huge thing to be able to start with. Gardens. What's gardens? Yes.
Which gardens?
What is that?
Oh, there's some gardens at Trinity Valley and at Pupil and at Orleans.
And which,
And there's going to be some in those.
And there's starting to be one in the high school.
Oh, nice.
And it's my opinion that gardening is a way to teach
Absolutely.
behavior.
Go out, work
And
with your
cooperate.
hands. Yep. Cooperate with each other. I like that. I like it a lot. I agree with you. Here's PBIS, 2 feathers, a very strong asset in this district. Down here under strong and engaged site leadership, we have willing, capable staff, consistent leadership, leadership models with direction. Okay, very strong leaders in this district. I've been fortunate to meet over the last year. Strong educator support system, professional development, human resources, family and community engagement. Families want and need to be included and informed. Absolutely. We have 3 tribes, tribal resources, and community relationships. Very strong. And then over in inclusive policy, creating procedures. So this looks like our area of greatest need. I mean, just with this small sampling, and of course, this is a very small sampling, but look at everything that we have begun. Everything, so we're not starting to go. We've got a lot in place already to build upon. And Jen, if I'm correct, I think that it is, I think you're up. Yes.
I need to go over there because I can't see what I wrote. But, so this little piece is just to give you some examples of the implementation of an MTSS in our district in ways that, we might not have named it as MTSS, but it really is organizing the services that we provide to students and seeing how they fit into a multi-tiered system. This was Craig's sentence. MTSS is universal in its design and specific in its application by site. And I know that on that graph that Melanie showed, it talked about the school site having the most influence over what supports are available for students. So MTSS probably started with the district in using RTI when it was specifically response to instruction and intervention, specifically with academics. MTSS is inclusive of RTI. So the first experience that I actually had with formally introducing MTSS, it was the same time that Trinity Valley was involved with the Orange County Department of Education. It was called Scale Up Your MTSS, and I remember talking with somebody at the Orange County Department of Education and asking, for some of us, it might be start up the MTSS, because, you know, different districts are in different states, and they said, that's great. We want you to get started and really purposefully developing a system. It actually is a 2-year cycle for the grant. They extended it for a 3rd year to spend the money down because of the pandemic and how schools were unable to utilize some of their resources. So that has ended at Trinity Valley, but they got a great head start, and they really got a good foundation. And we have had staff from Trinity Valley that have presented at the district leadership
Absolutely.
committee, because they're committed to systematizing the way we collect information about students, the way that we track students over time, so that we can say, well, what kinds of supports have they been provided in the past, especially if they change schools. It's not locked in someone's memory. We actually have a way of communicating information. So currently we're in the Wild Rivers School Transformation Grant, and that is how we began the road with PBIS site teams. So there's the broad practice of implementing positive behavior supports, and then there's the really specific, what does it look like at each school? Because each school site needs to have the directions and how they're going to inform their students about the expectations will look different. So that's what we are currently participating in with Northern Humboldt's grant coordinator. Pupil Valley High has a staff member who is providing support to staff with the idea of universal design for learning, and that's really the way that we structure our classrooms. So they're really focusing, they do have a PBIS behavior team, and they are also looking at how do we structure our lessons so that students have access, so that we are providing mechanisms for kids who are visual learners, who are auditory learners, who need to create projects so that they can constantly be engaged with the content that we're trying to present and have them have mastery of, because there's lots of ways of learning. So it really creates menus for students and for teachers to deliver lessons. So Captain John is eligible for a new MTSS seed grant through UCLA. We have a proposal that Erin Moya is working on. She'll bring it to the board in October. And they're really looking at how can we take our best that we have across the state, invest in it, and create pilot projects so we can have that, as Melanie was saying, best practices. So that initiative is taking, something on a small scale at one school and saying, does this impact students? So we're going to look at the principal of that school will present to the board to talk about starting with the universal screening. So Carrie started with assessment. We have to start with assessment, assessing students with where they are at, social, emotionally, their behaviors and academics, and then saying, hey, when we tried this program, do we see results? So that's something that will be coming to the board in the next couple of weeks. And then we have a relationship and support with the Humboldt County Office of Education. They have a prevention and intervention team, which is basically their MTSS team. And we have engaged in training with them. We've had staff come out to our district. They offer professional development. Craig, do you have anything else for PBIS in action? Or I'm sorry, MTSS in action?
Well, what I think is great is that each of the sites established site teams, and they are very committed. They meet regularly, and they're continuing to carry the work forward. So it's gaining momentum at their individual sites that will help it to be sustainable.
Good, well said, Craig, because that is what we're after. When the grant goes away, we don't want any of this to go away. We want it to be sustainable well beyond the grant.
Question, I'm not exactly sure how to explain it, but when we have so many different students who learn in so many different ways, but we give them a test that's the exact same, are we measuring how most children learn, or
I love that question.
okay,
We're doing an assessment in a single way,
right, but we
So-
have,
but we're saying that we want to support kids who learn and teachers who teach in
Well,
a
I'm
bunch of different
not even
ways.
thinking of it, I'm actually thinking of the end of the road, when we actually test at the end of the year to see what they learned. How do we know that if they all have the same?
I'd like to take that question, if nobody minds. So you've heard Jen and I both refer to universal design for learning a couple of times. Universal design for learning is a method whereby you instruct and assess students in a variety of ways. So you might have a math class again, and there are, I'm actually going to give you an actual example. I taught calculus at McKinleyville High School for a lot of years, and it drove me crazy that an old school calculus class, kids would drop like flies over the first couple of weeks, and you'd be left with half the number of kids in the class. Because it was meant for almost, it was a gatekeeper class. You've heard that before, right? And so the way that I taught the class, any student who had come into that class, who had the prerequisites, would be successful in that class because I tweaked the instruction and the assessment. And so, and then I also tweaked the grading. So let's say that a student took a chapter 2 test that, I mean, I didn't do chapters, but, you know, just for the sake of talking, and they were unable to pass that test. Well, the following Wednesday, after every single test for 10 years, the next Wednesday was come in and work with groups, other students, and your teacher to show that you are working towards mastery of this, so I can sign it off and give you credit for having passed that test. And so, and students were highly successful. And then I didn't grade, of course, on a 90 to 100 is an A, and 80 to 90 is a B. I did not grade on that. I graded by grouping. If there was a group of students whose scores were 83 to 92, and they were in a group, there are your A's. And then the next group, and I learned that from college professors. And so what is a teacher in universal design for learning will do is they will supply a variety of ways for students to learn the material and a variety of ways for students to demonstrate their knowledge. So all of the tests for chapter 2 don't need to look the same. That was a long-winded answer.
That's okay. What it brings me to is, so when we do our CASP test,
The aspect, yeah.
at the end of the year,
Summative, end of year.
how much, I've always put so much, had so much regard for those test scores, but do they, I mean, are those tests designed to actually get,
They,
okay,
The CASP, just like the CST before that and the STAR before that, is the same imperfect measure, but it's good for comparative. That's what I use. Me personally, you know, if I'm teaching math and Melanie's teaching math, and I see that 70% of her kids are making the and 26% of mine are, and I'm looking, I'm going, these are the same group of kids. That tells me I've got to go ask Melanie what she's doing. And so I think it's super important that way. You come down to the individuals, goes back to what Melanie says. Does it offer different ways to show what you know? No, it doesn't.
yeah, well, it's supposed to, they say that the mathematics exam, for example, like if the kid misses the first question, then the exam renorms. Then they miss the second one and it renorms. The problem with that is that by the time a kid has gone through 5 questions and they have no clue what you're talking about, they're getting pretty discouraged. And you have to have a pretty high reading level to get through the test. So there are problems with it.
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
You were asking that question. I was hearing you ask,
we're giving tests, is the information guiding us? At the end of the year, it guides the next teacher maybe, but it doesn't guide the teacher that was teaching.
That the testing should be going on throughout the year, so the teacher can be, okay, this isn't working, so I need to do this.
And I know we're doing that. I just wonder at it's what's on our dashboard. And it's what people look at to see how successful we are. And there's not really any other way to show, is there another way to show our success? How can we really tell that we're not being successful?
Well, one thing we can do is work towards a solid MTSS where we are instructing every child at their level in our general education classrooms to give them a fighting chance on these tests that the state makes them take. That is one of the things that we can do.
And then Martha, in the LCAP process, the CAS populates the dashboard. And that's something that we must, report. And that is a measure. And so we talked about using multiple measures. So with our teachers who are in the K-8 setting, now having some tools with the Success for All curriculum, that we can use local measures. They are valid measures. They're just not the CAS. So looking at, they will be probably off for some period of time because in addition to testing, does the student know how to read at grade level? Do they have a good comprehension? Can they spell? They have to know how to take the test and use the computer. So there's multiple layers that are, we're handing them a tool, but we really want to see what their reading is. But if they don't know how to use the tool, it might be skewed. So I think there's two things for us to work on and build on is teaching them how to utilize the tool of the test and become familiar with it, and then actually increasing the proficiency of reading. So, but I hear your concerns about that. We're talking about trying to meet students' needs and their learning styles, but we do have a pretty slim and narrow road for that final assessment at the end of the year.
So it's a good group. Okay, Jen and Craig, I think this is your slide.
Well, you did one of these. Do you want to explain what these?
So what each of the school sites did as part of personalizing the MTSS program to them is they came up with an acronym that would guide them to be part of their regular language. So Captain John has flow, and these are on banners at these school sites. Some of the school sites have made shirts so that way it's a constant reminder of the positive expectations that we have for the students. So Captain John has flow, follow through, learn, optimize solutions, and work hard. You can see there WitchPeck has soar, be safe, on task, and respectful. The other school sites, Jack Norton and Orleans have roar, which I can probably look right here because I don't see it up there. So let me do that. So roar is to be responsibly safe, on task, always kind, and respectful. And then see who else responded. So that's it. But Trinity Valley also has one. Some of the other school sites have put some of their early efforts into establishing teams and getting the process for meeting and then identifying these. So the schools, even though they're all starting at basically the same place, some of them are making quicker progress because the site leadership, the MTSS site team has really come together and has started to make that progress. And they've seen a lot of good response. Did you have your hand up? Oh.
Hey, Jen,
I wanted to just back up with the PBIS and just the basic premise here is just like we teach kids how we were talking about long division today in our cabinet meeting. And, it's something we have to explicitly teach. Kids do not figure out how to do long division on their own. Generally, people don't. And then we reteach, and then we figure out different ways of teaching. And so, the idea of the PBIS initiative is that we, the best situation is when we explicitly talk with students and explain what our expectations are for behaviors, instead of having them figure it out and guess how they're supposed to behave. And so just like we teach and reteach math and reading, our expectation for ourselves is that we teach and we reteach behaviors in a positive way. We show kids what they should be doing. We have them model it. We do fish bowls where we say, okay, I need an actor to show what you do when you break your pencil in class. I mean, there's all these little things that happen in classrooms that can either be kids have solutions or it becomes chaos. And chaotic environments are really hard learning environments for kids. So having those systems in multiple levels across the school campus for playground use, walking in the hallways, being on the bus, breaking pencils. That's something that I struggled with for years with younger students, how to manage materials really and how they can throw things off. So it really is framing things positively and saying behaviors are things that we learn and we develop habits. So, and again, that is at the school site because that's where the contact is with the students.
Absolutely.
It's been really exciting seeing
The school
development.
is the place of transformation. Okay, I can do this in 5 minutes. I ran over earlier, and so I am going to
Melanie, I'd like to introduce this,
oh, okay,
but no, not me. I would like for us to introduce this.
okay.
However, when we have the break, I want to talk about maybe not doing the self-assessment without the full board. I just want to we can do that during the break.
Okay.
To the board.
All right. You want me to go ahead then, or?
Go ahead, yeah, introduce
Oh,
it.
okay.
I'd like to go
Okay.
over the components, but
Okay,
just don't have too much buildup in case we decide to put it off for when we have the board.
for sure. Oh, yeah, good point. Is there like 3 people absent?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the LISA, the LEA self-assessment. And as a couple of you have mentioned tonight about testing and how testing is valid for students, the LISA is our test. It is the document that tells us how we are doing. It's an MTSS fidelity assessment tool. And so if you look through here, I am not going to go through all of these individually because I'm gonna let you read through it on your own later. But you'll see that there are components in here that I'm looking on page 2 right now, for example. The components tell the category. The first component is shared beliefs, vision, and mission. And so then there's a definition of what they are asking here, or what they're talking about. So you can see the LEA vision and mission provides a collaboratively developed descriptive picture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not extremely important right now of what this part says, except for, I see Board of Education in there. It says that one of the stakeholders is the Board of Education and that presentations will be made to the Board of Education on this. And so what will happen is the MTSS leadership team will take this test, so to speak, and when we do it, there's a rubric attached to each one of the components. And there are 4 choices, and we'll look at this and we'll say, we get to vote in majority rules. We think we're doing great on this. We're moving right along, and this is not an area of concern for us. And so we'll assign a score to ourselves based on the rubric. Or we'll look at this and we might say, we're doing some of these parts based on the rubric, but not other parts. And so we'll have to have a little bit of conversation around that. Long story short, what we do is we rate ourselves in each category that is contained in this document. And so if you flip through here, you'll see that component 2 which is on page 4, is the teaching, learning, and assessment component. And that there are 6 categories under that component in which we would have to rate ourselves. How are we doing in each of these categories? So for example, category 2.3, do we ensure equitable access to rigorous coursework and educational opportunities, et cetera, based on the rubric that you're not seeing right now? Okay, and so if we flip over to category 3.1, that's the category that we were going to focus on tonight. I'm going to stop talking right now because Jen, I would like to know from you where you want to go with this. I don't think I should sit here and read all these categories to the board tonight. We did have a 10-minute break scheduled right after this, so maybe we want to go to break.
Yeah, I want to check in with everyone. Is that something you would like, break to stretch? Do you want to keep moving? We did.
I'm comfortable for a break.
I'm comfortable with a break.
You want to stop
You
the
know,
line?
My decision would have been based on how much longer we might be going.
Okay, hang on a second. So here's, so give me 2 minutes and then we can decide if we want to break. And maybe what we were going to do is about 30 minutes and then wrap it up. But I have a proposal to our internal the calendar that or the schedule that we had. So it was my intention to actually go through one of the sections this evening, and it's the self-reflection piece about governance and leadership, and actually read through, Melanie was referring to the rubric, to read through this rubric with each of these indicators. So this was the mysterious rubric that she talked about. However, I feel that I value your input greatly, and to not have the entire board here to go through and do a self-assessment of our governance and leadership, we have voices that are missing. So I have the packets that just describe each of the domains, and then we're going to go dive in deep into ask basically 4 questions. But I wanted to ask what your opinion is, if we should table this and wait until we have the whole board, because the intention is to do a self-assessment and then set our direction. So
If we, you know, we have the whole board, then everybody would get those all.
yeah, I can give these to you to preview if you'd like, but just
And maybe if we were gonna table it, then you can give it to us to preview and also send it to the 3 members that weren't here to preview.
I can send it, or we can just wait and then we can say we're going to set up another, 35-minute time to go through it, and I won't have to give you any papers at all. I'll even collect what I just handed to you. But I just wanted to just ask, would you like to wait to have the whole board here so that we're all going, getting us to a starting place altogether?
I think we should all be in the same place, because we have different, different things. We can't take it and study it.
Oh, sure. I'll keep the colored ones but it's really good. It goes very in depth. So I do feel like having 3 folks that are going to be trying to catch up to everybody. We're trying to align things, but so I just wanted to get a sense of, that would be my recommendation. If you guys are gung ho, we can look through all of it.
So then we'd be having another special meeting. It would be nice.
Yes, we're famous for special meetings, so there's no doubt that that will happen. We do have the ESSER plan that we will have to approve, but we will just talk all of how we're doing stakeholder engagement. So towards the end of October, we're going to have a special meeting. Or if the regular meeting is really light, we can have a small portion of a study session.
Toward the end of October, I'm gonna be gone from the 20th to the 27th.
I think I've looked
But
at it.
I'll be gone. the 30th.
So I mean, I don't think that this is for us. So if we end up doing this self-assessment piece in November, I mean, it's not a hurry. This is a commitment. I mean, when we talk about implementing either PBIS or MTSS, we talk about a 5-year process for implementation. So a month or two is not going to make a difference. So it's basically, do we want everybody here so we can start all together?
Very good.
I think the value of the group experience, the self-reflection, and then the dialogue that comes after it is so important that it should be done with everyone present.
Mhm.
Because it's that process that is very, very meaningful. So it would be worth waiting for everyone to be here.
I just like to fit, I've been chasing money now for 20, I think it's the 20th year. I've been grants and grants and grants. I've never seen anything in my experience like MTSS in that this state, and I agree with them and the feds and everything. I'm gonna retire in 9 years, 10 years, whenever I retire. And if I came back in 20 years, I feel pretty damn confident that it's not going anywhere because it makes too much sense. It's, you've got your social emotional, you've got your behavioral, you've got your academic, you've got to align your systems, you've got your community. And so I would encourage you to, I mean, this is, take the time and learn this because it's gonna be, it's not going anywhere for all the right reasons for a change. This isn't just multiple, this isn't multiple choice help. This is actually something that really allows us to align what our, this strengths idea, what are our strengths and how do we go?
That's an important statement in our district because we have programs come in. go out,
Oh, sure.
come in, and go out.
So does Northern Home, we're the
years
same. Yep, I agree.
Here's another one.
But this isn't a program. I guess that's the thing, you and I we could be in Hawaii with some Hawaiian language school and MTSS would work there because how does it fit with our culture? How does it fit with our community? How are we, this universal design for learning, this idea of, this is, it's stuff that quote unquote good teachers have done for a long time, but weren't necessarily aware of it. And that's what's so exciting about it. So it's, I encourage you, internalize this because it's going to help. It's helping us already. I'm seeing it on our campuses, and your teachers are already starting to do it with your PBIS and other stuff, which is part and parcel. I think it's a big deal for all the right reasons.
So if we are going to skip that and postpone that, then we don't have much left in terms of just that a break probably wouldn't be appropriate.
I think it's a smart decision to postpone. Okay, can minute break over?
So,
about a 1 minute?
okay, sure, because I think that would be good to just kind of look through.
I'm just concerned because now it's not
You're right. I should have got it.
This stand up too.
Yeah.
In fact, these are empty. Are these new? Or just
There is, but that's a weekend. That's a Saturday, Sunday.
No. Too much sitting first.
typically when you're old.
Okay, so you're going to be away. Yes, and I'm sure everybody knows who's on.
Sorry. If you set it on the table. it's recycled.
Tommy, yes, closet, right?
So we are.
I think we can. Let me look.
It's noisy, it's clunky, but if we don't.
What I could do is.
Our fire. Radio.
that the MTSS leadership team will be going through every year in an effort to maybe even more. Northern Humboldt's doing it twice a year.
Oh, my goodness.
They
So
started last year doing it twice a year.
when we did it last year, we had 2 sessions that were each 3 hours. To get
We
through
can do
this.
it in less time than that.
Well, I think we were using Zoom. There were a number, and it was brand new.
Yeah.
To all.
We
of
had a
us.
brand new facilitator. We'll refine it as we move forward.
I mean, could we do it on Zoom?
There was an extension with the Brown Act. But basically, we're moving away from that because but I have to look at the dates. It was extended, but I don't know how long it was extended for.
Yeah, I remember it was extended.
So I wanted to leave this up here just so that you could see the 6 components. I certainly think the board
They're in your handout.
would be involved with the leadership and governance self-assessment. I also looked at the shared beliefs, vision, and mission, and that certainly is within the, the big picture, the broad ideas of what the board is responsible for. But we were going to focus on the leadership and governance, and I think in the document, the shared beliefs, vision, and mission is the first domain that is covered. So,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So I think
And so it starts from the green part and goes clockwise around. I think.
And then from this self-assessment, we also identified infrastructure as being a really important part for the MTSS district team to focus on. Instead of trying to do everything at once, saying, okay, where do we want to have our laying our foundation starting?
Yeah. And so the idea is that every time you engage in utilizing the LISA to self-assess, you will see some degree of improvement. You're not going to go from here to here. Remember that Jen mentioned it's a 5-year process. So it's going to be baby steps, baby steps, baby steps, but always, working towards getting to the end point.
So I
Where
used,
you'll just be maintaining it.
and so I used the self-assessment that the district MTSS team did as a metric in the LCAP. And there was 2. There was the there was the overall, and then there was the infrastructure. And Melanie was really helpful in terms of what is a reasonable amount of growth in 3 years? Because we want to go from, hey, we're at 1, we're just beginning, we want to be at 4. And she went 3 years, 4 stages in 3 years. That would be incredible growth.
Yeah.
And it's just in terms of really sticking with something and going slowly to really get things right. So it does in other ways align with the LCAP. It's really good to have a specific metric. So you want to go, I think the last slide just says Jen.
Next steps, well, we already know what we're doing for next steps. We're
Yes.
going to have another meeting where the board engages in the section 3 of the LISA.
So I think that what might be helpful for me in terms of really identifying the next steps is just hearing things that are helpful to you, or that, and then something you would like me to go and find out either more information about. So in some of our management meetings, we call it the plus delta, something that is working and something, what's the next step? So in terms of if you want specific resources, and that can help me to identify the next steps.
In my mind, since this is all based on data, maybe we should have the data in front of us.
Okay, and then my next step, I'd like to, since we're focusing on infrastructure, I'd like to find a way to research how we can get more connectivity in this district. Because this district involves not just Willow Creek and Blue Pond and all the other, it also involves Salyer, and Salyer's in a different county, which is, we've got problems.
When you say connectivity, are you talking about like internet connectivity? You're talking about community resources? and-
Connectivity, phone connectivity, because like if you want to send out a thing from the school district that says, oh, we're sending out this thing that says, you know, this is happening in our district and, you know, it's dangerous or whatever, you can't.
Jack, I'm wondering if, because last year you were all over the connectivity issue on the coast. And so I was wondering, I said we would come back to the question. I was wondering if you have any suggestions for Jen on avenues to take on that.
I think, I know my friend Diana Nebraska has done a bunch of the Russ grants over the years, and that's the rural, and you mentioned US Department of Agriculture, which I know is there. And then I seem to recall that I was on we were meeting with, he's a character, and I mean that in the full sense of it, but of the Small School Districts Association. What's his name, Tom or something? Tim Taylor. Tim Taylor might have some connections on who to do. Carrie, the challenge that I have is that this is, but for instance, I helped with the $3 million for your Prop 51 facilities grant, which is going to eventually help fund the rebuilding of your shop over there. But that's specific to a school district.
It is.
And this is so much broader than that. And now you throw in 2 counties, as you point out as well. And so it's, I don't, the other people maybe we want to talk to is Connie Stewart and the folks at whatever that regional thing she does at at Humboldt State University. And what do we call it?
I know her name and I don't know.
Yeah,
why.
she, no, because it's just a second.
One of the things that's popping up in my mind is that throughout our district, we have various entities taking on that connectivity issue. And I just have I don't have specifics or up to date, but I know like the Perukes brought in the
Yes.
fiber optic from Siskiyou County out on, I don't know, somewhere over the mountains. And then the Yurok tribe picked up on it, and so connectivity went that way. The Hupa tribe is doing their Acorn Wireless, which are just getting off the ground, and I'm really pleased. I finally got hooked up last week. And so now I don't have to sit and look at the little buffering button go around forever and miss half the program. So there are things bubbling up, but then the question becomes out of tribal jurisdictions, what's going on?
Yep.
So I don't
We have a
know.
very complicated.
Oh, no, it really is. And we're fortunate. We don't, ours is more at the kid level. How do we get, what I was doing, how do we get this kid to the hotspot? And, and I've got a handful of kids who, they weren't covered by Suddenlink, nor did they have cell reception there unless the wind was blowing the right way and they had a tinfoil hat on it. I get that. But I think perhaps actually the tribe, I think maybe your tribal folks might be the place to start, because I'm assuming certainly in the Hoopa Valley tribe, and if not, Yurok tribe and Karuk folks who've already done it, you can ask me about education grants and I can give you a lot of help. You ask me now about infrastructure grants and I'm sitting there scratching my head because it's outside of my area. But if we talk with them potentially, and so Jen, and Carmi and Craig, and I'm happy to kind of brainstorm with this. Connie, California Center for Rural Policies, it's out of Humboldt State. And so they're big enough, but maybe we start bringing together some folks, but
Federal communications.
These are all fun, I agree, yes, agriculture, federal communications commission, these are all things where you could have funding, but right now, it'd be like if you asked me to fix your electric car or even your gas car. I can put gas in it, I can plug it in, I can change the tires. When the light comes on, I can ignore it and make my wife mad. But if you want me to go and, change the transmission, it's like, I'm going, oh God, I know a guy or a gal, but that's the catcher. So we're just areas of expertise that I do not know. But there are people who know this, and our question is, how do we connect with them? So I'm happy to help with that.
I think Carrie's concern is that you can't even get 911 service where she's at.
No, I agree. I understand what you're saying.
Very scary. I mean,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
had
yeah.
a fire close to us.
Yeah.
No, and they couldn't notify people. We had to drive around and notify people. Or
Yeah.
Well, specifically because I think that most of our internet service providers are really building up. But our phone provider is, I mean, it's bad in Orleans, from Orleans to Sawyer.
Yep.
So I think that's where we need to pinpoint.
it's scary. And
Folks, as crazy as it
that's why I was
sounds.
thinking maybe calling the senator because,
Yeah. He moves
the
stuff. Yeah.
safety thing. And he probably has the connections of where to go, what to do.
That makes perfect sense. Okay. Otherwise, we're Elon Musk to put in more satellites.
We can't do our job if they won't do their job.
Yeah,
Well, one of the things with the Acorn Wireless, it's now under public utilities, and it's, that's the agency that they are making it happen. And they are providing their boots on the ground, they're doing the research for the homes, and they're installing, and I know it's not the phone, but it's just an infrastructure that is a public utility that seems out of the grasp of schools.
No.
Influence.
Our job is to just help support and align and encourage, because I agree, you don't want to go into the utilities business, you've got enough to keep you out of trouble, just like us, I wouldn't.
What's in your sweating bullets?
Exactly. But
Tell David Ellie to get his hard hat on.
But I think helping to organize, it's funny. That's a multi-tiered system of support as well.
And it does have the direct impact, I mean, in
Oh, my
addition to
Lord, yes.
safety, what we experienced last year when we had everybody at home trying to do distance learning, we thought, oh my goodness, we're sending home devices into the wild blue yonder without really having a good idea, without having done the assessment first and knowing who can connect.
Who knows how to work these things? There are parents who do not, you send it home and they're like, what do I do?
Paperweight. I get it. That's not fair. We agree. And and truthfully, and with climate change and more fires, you're going to have more smoke days. And in time, do we stay? Do we work? We'll have to figure it out. It's like, it's the need is there. You being in a out here in the hills have a more acute need than somebody down on the coast where it's cooler. And so I'm happy to start asking around and just talk. But it's not. I'll be honest here. I'm not your guy. But I'm happy to help you try to find your gal who's gonna take this thing next step.
I really think starting that with your state senator is going to be the best thing.
Yeah, and I'm connected to 3 groups that are, that connect with Salyer and all the cities beyond or and places beyond and Willow Creek and I'm in groups, so I can send out a thing saying, please call your senator and ask him these questions. And here's the contact.
I think it's really important. Assessments and say, we can't even reach 911. We have to get our boots on the ground and run over to all the neighbors. And when it gets down to that grass level to see what the issue is.
And Highway 299 corridor is not connected. You have to drive to Weaverville and then call, and then drive to ready and then call, because there's
I
dead
think
zones.
it's a bigger issue than just our school district.
It
is.
Okay, is there more for our instruction?
I just wanted to ask Tom or Martha if you had something I got from Laura Lee to have the data on hand. If we're going to be looking at data, and I know that we can pull reports on student attendance and the dashboard. Maybe I can show the dashboard because a lot of data is extracted from the state and presented there. And I think that that's something that would be worthwhile for us to look at how to access that data. And I just wanted to ask if you had anything else that might plus delta, something you would like a next step or something.
I think it would be good for not only for us to look at data, but to see how you and other administrators see it. So the form, it's not just the data, but the form.
Story about that. But looking at data and seeing two different things. I think and that's one of the things we recognized. We really needed to have definitions of what does this mean? What does a college and career indicator mean? Because we were looking at it one way and the state was looking at it a different way. And so we don't know if it's a formatting issue, if there's an actual material issue with how many students are college and career ready. So that's, thank you.
And because you are going to try to round this all up, I will be out of town first 20 days of November. Maybe 50, might be a little less than that. I'll find out the dates.
Okay.
So how many people are gonna be here between now and October 20th? How many people are gonna be gone?
I'll be here from the 17th to the 21st.
I'll be here.
You'll be here, you'll be
I
gone.
will be there.
Will you be here? Well, how about you? Okay, we'll all be here
Okay.
between the 17th.
Dana's really good at rounding people up.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
she keeps
I'm
track.
writing it all down.
Okay,
so.
okay, and then there will be a regular meeting during that time.
Between the 17th.
No,
and
no,
the 20th?
when Tom is gonna be on, so we can schedule a special meeting. so that everybody's here.
Yeah, I'm thinking between the 17th and the 20th, and then have her research the other three people.
I didn't really have a suggestion. I just kind of, as you said, the state something good too.
Yeah, your plus, something that's working, and the delta, something that, a next step.
Okay, well, all these trainings and all the information that we get is, as a board member, I feel like we're really becoming informed about what's happening in the classroom. And I'm understanding it more. I have 6 kids in Oregon school, 6 grandkids. And I can see all the things that the teachers are doing are a reflection of the and Craig, you're one of the teachers.
Thank you. I mean, there's so many good things happening, and it's about coordinating it and really, using our model programs. Pupil Elementary, for example, is really, for the way I look at it, is the lead agency with our early literacy rollout. So we want to take what is happening there simply because they've been given tools and have done training and then scale it up and have it influence and support kids at levels as well. So.
Is there any other?
No, I think that's a great ending point, unless somebody has something else they.
I just want to say thank you for having me tonight. I really enjoyed coming and talking with you.
I'm really pleased with all of the board development that we have been doing. Although all these meetings have been difficult, I really am pleased that the board is moving forward with all the professional development and getting up to speed on things, so. Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Tom moves. Is there a second? Second, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. You are adjourned.